Hi, welcome to the part one of the AWS Data Analytics Real Exam Questions. If you have seen my previous videos, this channel is totally focused on helping you clear the cloud certification exams. If you have already done AWS Cloud Basic Certification and Solution Architect Associate certifications, this is a good certification which will definitely help you get the jobs, or if you are already in the job, it will help you get work in the advanced fields of data analytics, and in turn drive your high productivity and increase your chances of promotion as well. Now let's jump into the questions. You may pause this video here to read this question carefully. So let's understand the story first. You have an S3 bucket or whatever. There are files there, and you have to move it to RDS for MySQL. And how are you moving? You are moving using Glue. So Glue is an ETL product given by AWS. Now, what is ETL? It is extract, transform, and load. So ETL tools, if you have seen or worked with Informatica, DataStage, Ab Initio, these are very famous ETL tools. So Glue is similar to those ETL tools. It does similar functionality, but highly customized to work on cloud, especially AWS cloud. Now let's understand the pain point of this question. What's happening is, take an example of, suppose you have three files on S3. So what Glue does is it picks these files, whatever transformation is required, and moves to RDS. Okay, so you get three files here, and this is your day one. So day one, when you suppose go to production, whatever was there on that day, you have to move it there, to the database. Done. That's fine. Now that is not the pain point. That is just the first part. The pain point is happening when you do a day two, day three, day four incrementals. So for the first day there were three files, and you moved these three files here. Perfect. Now the second day, so these three files, if you see here, these three files are day one data, which is already in the database. The second day, a fourth file comes. Okay. Now this yellow color is the fourth file. Now you have to move this to RDS. This is incremental. You don't have to move files 1, 2, 3, and 4. You only have to move file 4. That is incremental, because 1, 2, 3 are already here. Okay. So that is the concept of incremental. Any new data that comes, you only have to move the new data here. Now what is the pain point here? It says Glue job processes all S3 input data on each run. That means it is processing the first day files, that is these three were first day files, and the new file. But that is not what we want. So how to solve this with minimal coding effort? This is the key. There can be options which will solve it, but not with minimal coding effort. Now this option, it states that you have all ETL jobs read data from S3 using a data frame. This Glue, when it reads from S3, it should use data frame. Right now, what is it using? Did you see the question? Read it properly. What is it using? It is using dynamic frame. So this is a data frame. See, data frame, consider it as a table structure. In Spark, we call it data frame, but consider it as a table structure. So if you are using data frame, this table structure is fixed. But if you want this table structure to be dynamic, you have to use dynamic frames, which our question is already saying here, dynamic frames. So dynamic frames, there must be a purpose why they are using dynamic frames, because they may be wanting some sort of dynamic structures. So if you make it dynamic to data, That is restricting the future, number one. Second is it will not help you achieve this goal, or where you just have to pick incremental records. So A is wrong. Now B, it says to use job bookmarks, which looks correct. Why? Because Glue jobs, Glue gives you this feature of bookmark, where Glue tracks data that is already processed. Okay, since it is itself tracking it, this is the feature of Glue. Job mark is a feature of Glue. Hence, what will happen is it suits this one, minimal coding effort. We are not coding anything. Glue has already given it, AWS has already given it. We are just using it. Hence, since it says minimal coding effort, this looks correct. But let's look at C and D as well. Maybe there is a better option. What C says is you yourself will create a custom logic on the ETL jobs. That means you will go inside your Glue code and create your own logic. Even if job bookmark is available, you would show your extra intelligence. You would waste time of your project and project manager and create a new logic which can have errors, which is prone to human errors, and it will take its own sweet time to test. So this option C is straight away violating minimal coding effort principle. It can achieve the goal. Maybe someone is really great at coding and they can achieve this goal, but B is far better because it adheres to the minimal coding effort guideline in the question. So C is wrong compared to B. Now option D, it is saying that you will delete the processed objects from S3. So you had three files. Once this data is loaded here, Glue will drop these objects so that next day these three files will be invisible, like this, gone, tata, bye bye, all three files are gone. But the question here comes is, uh, what if something is screwed up here, the data, and later client says, hey, you know what, I think we were supposed to see 1 million records, but I can see 100 records are missing. Now you want to investigate, but your intelligent mind, it has deleted this file. So nobody can backtrack and see, did the file have those records? You know, in ETL, it is very important that you save all these files for some time so that you can troubleshoot and see at which point the data dropped. This is a very crucial thing of data migration, data integration, ETL, that none of the data should get dropped. If it is getting dropped, there should be a proper reject reason. So first of all, Glue may not have access to delete this S3 because these files are created most likely by a different system. A source system creates this file. And second is you would want to retain it for troubleshooting. So in S3 there is a concept of cool layer or cool tier, archive tier. So at least you should keep it in the cool tier for some days so that you can troubleshoot it later. So due to these reasons, D is wrong. So we will lock this answer. B is the correct answer and we will move forward.
Now let's look at this question. First, we will try to understand the story. So we have S3, which is on a single zone. That means only on A1 availability zone, A1 AZ. It cannot be on multiple AZs. And then there is EMR cluster, which has various jobs. And what are the jobs doing? They are, if you see this, they are performing analytics on the log data. So S3 has the log data, and the jobs here are performing analytics on S3. Now in the recent times, these number of jobs are increasing, because of which the jobs are becoming a bit slower, because too many jobs are trying to access the files on S3. They are trying to do analytics on this data on S3. Now let's look at the pain point. It says a data analyst has determined that it is taking longer for EMR task nodes to list objects. So the problem is this EMR task nodes, it is taking a lot of time to list the objects in S3. So what should you do out of these options? What should you do to increase the performance? That's a basic question. So let's go through the options. The first one says use a hash function to create random string, etc. So this option A is primarily used if the job is finding it difficult to sort the files and understand which, suppose there is a daily file coming in and there is a date put in the file name. So the jobs try to understand what is the file name and how to derive it, etc. But here it doesn't seem that this is a problem, because it is talking about delay in listing the objects in S3. So always remember, whenever we are using such kind of EMR clusters, etc., it internally uses DynamoDB to create that list, like what is processed and what's not processed. It puts it in DynamoDB. Okay, so this answer has to be something to do with DynamoDB. Common sense says that is related to DynamoDB, and we have only one option here which is linked to DynamoDB. So C would be the correct answer. So what we have to do is we have to increase the RCUs for this DynamoDB table. So the jobs, they refer this for listing the objects, and if we increase the RCU, what is RCU? So if you see this documentation, it says clearly that if there are not enough read or write capacity on the DynamoDB table, the request will be throttled, and that is what is happening here. So what it says is, for this reason, you should ensure that the table has enough throughput capacity. So we are trying to increase the RCU here so that the read becomes more faster. We try to increase the read capacity. So the RCU is read capacity unit. So you see here it says, for example, suppose that you have provisioned 100 read capacity units for the DynamoDB table. So this is just giving an example. You may read it in your free time. You may read this section by pausing this video, but we got our answer. So we will also look at option B. So B, it is talking about lifecycle policy on S3 storage class. So storage class is the default class. So it is saying to change the S3 storage class to S3 standard. Okay, so S3 storage class standard is the default. Okay, so most likely even if we change it to standard, this problem will not get resolved. So what will happen is this one zone will be changed to standard. So this one zone will become standard, but still it will have no impact, because it is not the problem of, what is the difference between the two, standard and one zone? Is one zone is on a single AZ. One primary difference I'm saying, it is on single AZ, and standard is on multiple AZs. So this question, the problem is not arising because everything is on one AZ. This is not because of that. This is because of some sort of bottleneck around DynamoDB tables. And option D, just moving the EMR clusters. So this EMR cluster, even if we move it from AZ1 to AZ2, it will not solve it, because the problem is not happening because the hardware on the AZ1 is not good, or AZ1 is not well connected from a network perspective. That's why this is occurring now. Nowhere in the question the problem says that there is some sort of hardware issue in that AZ, or the data center, the AZ is not reachable via network, the network is slow. Nothing of that sort is mentioned. That's why D is wrong. So we will lock C as our answer and proceed forward. So let's look at this question, a big question. Actually the question is small, but the options are really lengthy. So you have a EMR cluster, you have Hive on it. It is used to run ad hoc queries, and users are complaining about sluggish performance. So the clusters probably are slow, and when they analyze it, usually whenever you see performance is slow, data analysts or some people will analyze it, and they find that 90% of the queries are submitted an hour after the markets open. Consider this a stock market, something an app like Zerodha or Upstock or Robinhood is being used. So what happens is usually the traffic or the load on the servers is different at different times. So when the market opens, so for the first hour, there is a maximum transaction happening. Uh, and that's what we are seeing here, that 90% of the queries are submitted 1 hour after the market opens. And but even when that happens, the overall SDFS utilization never exceeds 10%. Okay, then how do you solve the performance issue, or what is causing that issue? So let's go through the options. So if you see these four options, what I have done is I've categorized these. First two options, they are linked to instance fleet configurations. Okay, options A and B are related to instance fleet configurations. C and D are related to instance group configurations. So first thing you have to attack this problem is, first you have to choose what will you do, instance fleet or instance group. Okay, now second thing is, the second part is almost the same. What it does is, it does automatic scaling, auto scaling, based on this metric, capacity remaining GB metrics. Option B does it. So option A and C, if you see, both are having similar second option. They both are using capacity remaining GB metric, and B and D are using yarn memory available percentage metric. Okay, so that's one. Now let's try to rule out certain options. First thing is, anything to do with capacity remaining GB metrics. So this is not talking about GB utilization. Okay, so if you see this metric, capacity remaining GB, what it gives you is amount of remaining SDFS disk capacity. Does this question talk about disk capacity? No. This 90% of queries are submitted. This is also not disk capacity. SDFS utilization, this is compute capacity, not disk capacity. So since the question is not talking about disk capacity, we will rule out options which talks about capacity remaining GB metric. That is, option A is wrong and option C is wrong. So now we are left with these two options. So these two options are almost the same. The second and the third lines are the same, except for the first line. D says usage of instance group configurations, and B says usage of fleet configurations. Now the thing is, when you see such scenario where for the first hour the utilization goes to 90%, and I'm assuming for the remaining hours it is not high, and the overall compute doesn't exceeds 10%. That means that we need to put some sort of auto scaling. There are two types of scaling: EMR managed scaling and auto scaling. We want to put here auto scaling. So if you put instance fleet configurations, that means you are deciding the fleet beforehand. So so for example, in this case, you are taking a call that I am building a fleet with 4 EC2 instances or EMR clusters, whatever the EMR clusters be. You are deciding it beforehand. So this is the range. So when you kickstart, it will wait till all 4 instances have been built, and that is the uh, space within which your load has to operate. Okay, that's why we want to go with group configurations, because group configuration supports auto scaling based on a metric. So D looks correct to me. Now let us first understand yarn memory available percentage. Now if you see this documentation, what is yarn memory available percentage? This is the percentage of remaining memory available to the yarn, and uh, it is primarily used for scaling cluster resources based on yarn memory usage. So this fits the bill here because you want to understand the what percentage of uh, like for SDFS the utilization is 10%. So you can see from this matrix, you if that relation is high, then you scale up or scale out, and then you have a scale in policy. If you see that utilization is low, so you scale in means reduce the number of instances or reduce the number of clusters. Scale out means increase the number of clusters. So D looks correct. Let's move forward. So friends, please subscribe to my channel. So let's look at this question. So let's first understand the story. So the story goes this way: you have a Kinesis fire hose, and real-time data is coming out of it, and then you have to do analytics on this. That's why I've put this symbol, and it has to be done real time. You see, near real time. So this has to be near real time. Can anybody say why it is not real time and it is near real time? Because there is a buffer interval set to 60 seconds. So it is not instant, like within a second or 2 seconds. That is real time. Since there is a gap of 60 seconds, we are telling it is near real time. So in order to do that, which option would suffice? So if you just quickly whiz through, okay, see, if you have to do real time or near real time, so you should plug that analytics software here itself. You should not store it somewhere and then do some processing and then again take it somewhere. That is not real time. That is not real time, near real time also. That is what we do for aggregate level processing in a data warehouse or a data mart, but that is not real time or near real time. If you quickly whiz through, you will see only A. It is plugged uh, on Kinesis Firehose, and they are setting up Kibana dashboards. So Elasticsearch, it is plugged directly, and Kibana dashboard is doing the reporting or analytics here. So there is no time loss in between to move the data somewhere, store it somewhere, do some transformations, etc. It's instantly. So it is near real time. So logically, this should suffice. But let's scan through other options. Now, what does option B suggest? It is telling you get the data into S3 and then put it into SageMaker to do some analytics. So there is a time loss. So it will not help you meet the near real-time goal, because this storage of data in S3 would take time, and then from S3 the data would move to SageMaker for analysis, or you would connect SageMaker for analysis, etc. So this you can do when you do not have a near real-time or a real-time goal. Then you can do it. So this option will not suffice. Now option C. Okay, if you see option 3, it is telling you to move and plug Spice there, and then you get, so in the Spice it is a parallel compute system. You can do a lot of aggregations and so on there, and then you move it to Redshift, and then you can plug any reporting tool to Redshift and do your analytics. This is again not real time. See, Spice we never use for real time or near real time. Spice is not meant for that. Okay, Spice is meant for where you have to get volumes of data and perform some parallel compute on massive amount of data, maybe aggregations, etc. So this is again not sufficing the near real-time goal. So C is wrong. Let's look at D. So in this case, if you see, D, it is talking about getting glue. So always remember. So glue, we use it for data warehouse systems when we want to do those sort of transformations. So glue, the moment you see glue, it is never real time or near real time. So here as well, this is the diagrammatic representation for option D. So they are getting data in S3, they are getting using glue to do transformation and processing, then plugging Athena and then Spice. This is crap. You do not do so much of processing on a real time or near real time basis. This is pure crap. Okay. If there are so many stages to arrive at the analytics, then it is never a real time or a near real time system. Near real time means what? 60 seconds or 2 minutes you should get the data. Real time means 1 second, 2 second you should get the data in the report. So this will not help you out. The load into S3 itself will take few seconds. Transformation by glue will take few seconds, if not a minute or two. Then Athena processing, Spice processing will itself take a minute or two. So it will not achieve your goal. So we will lock our answer as A. So let's look at question number 5. So the way this question is structured is, these are the requirements, these 4 points or 5 points, and uh, what we have to do is, in order to suffice this requirement, which long-term storage service will suffice out of these. So let's scan through it. So first try to understand what is the requirement. The data size is 32 terabytes. That means we have large data sets. The data size is huge. So whenever data size is huge, uh, it can be anything. It can be Redshift, it can be Elasticsearch, because Elasticsearch has massive data sets. So let's look at other option. There is a low volume of single row inserts. So if there is a low volume of single row inserts, that means it's not a transactional system. It is mostly an aggregate system, like a warehouse, data warehouse, or a data mart. So keeping that in mind, I think Elasticsearch is out of question, because Elasticsearch is having high volume of single row inserts. Primarily why Elasticsearch is used is for logs. If you have log data, it is coming every second or every 10 seconds, the log data is coming. And Aurora's MySQL. If you have a website that is writing to your database, Aurora MySQL, so imagine Amazon.com or some website where the transactions are happening every minute or even multiple times every minute. So in that case, it is not low volume single row inserts, it's high volume single row inserts. That's why Aurora is out of question. I showed you why. And Elasticsearch also is out of question, because Elasticsearch, the monitoring logs or some sort of logs is constantly coming in here. It is high writes each day. So we now know from this requirement that A and D is not the answer. The answer has to be between B and C. Let's look at it. The high volume of aggregation queries each day. So aggregation queries, uh, Redshift does it. If you talk about aggregation, it is primarily for data warehouse, and Redshift is the one which does it. It suits it. And then the next one is multiple complex joins are performed. Only in a data warehouse you perform a complex join, which spawns through multiple fact and dimension tables. But a complex join can also be performed on Neptune. So what is Neptune? So have you seen these recommendations from Amazon.com or Amazon.in? So it's like you see these customers who viewed this item also viewed this. How is this done? This is done by using a graph database. Neptune is a graph database. It links the data sets in terms of nodes, and the moment you buy something, it tries to establish a relationship, and then it says a person who buys this is also likely to view this and buy this. So how Neptune does it is the structure of the database itself is very different. Okay, so that's why it may not necessarily apply multiple complex joins, because Neptune is born to perform such activities. So still the complex joins requirement applies perfectly to Redshift, and then the queries involve a typical small subset of the columns in a table. So that happens like you have a fact table in a data warehouse in Redshift, and that fact table has, say, a lot of columns, but we generally don't tend to use all of those columns or a bulk of those columns in our queries. We try to use a small subset to arrive at our reporting needs or whatever analysis we are doing on the data warehouse. So keeping that in mind, Redshift looks to be more correct compared to other options. Please subscribe to my channel. So this brings us to the end of part 1 of this video series. Please stay tuned for the remaining parts. Till then, thank you.